I'm Robyn from Red Robyn Crafts. I'm so excited that you decided to create these gorgeous felt book pages for your child. I'm sure they'll enjoy endless hours of fun with them. I'm also thrilled that you decided to stitch your page. I've created this video specifically with beginners in mind, in order to help you with the basics of threading a needle, knotting the thread, and getting started on your project. So let's do it!
So regardless of the stitching project that you're doing, threading the needle and knotting the thread are going to be the first things that you're going to have to do. Now I have here some DMC floss, and this is what I use in all of my projects. Anytime I'm stitching or doing any embroidery, I'll always use a DMC floss. And I have a needle and a pair of scissors so that I can trim the knot once I've made it. Now the DMC floss, and in fact other brands of floss, always are made up of 6 smaller strands. So this is one length that I've cut, and you'll see that there's actually 6 smaller strands in there. Now the number of strands that you use will depend on the project that you're doing. Sometimes I'll find that I use all 6 if I'm wanting to stitch quite a thick line. I'll use all 6 strands. Sometimes I might just use 1 if it's a very, very fine outline that I'm creating. It really depends on the project and the look that you want to achieve. The other thing that I should mention is that the length of thread that you cut really is quite important. Try to never cut it too long. It's always tempting because that way you're having to thread your needle less often, you're having to create fewer knots, but what you'll find is when your thread is too long, it's just going to get tangled and it's going to be a pain for you in the end. Try to keep it a little bit shorter, and that way you'll reduce the likelihood of it tangling. This particular one that I've cut is about 2 feet long or 60 centimetres. Somewhere around there is fine. You certainly don't need to measure it, just roughly 2 feet or 60 centimetres. Now I'm going to thread a needle with 2 of these strands so that I can show you how to separate the strands, because they will tangle if you don't separate them correctly. What I do is I always fray the end of the length of thread to reveal these 6 strands, and then I'll take one and pinching the rest of it in my finger, I'll just pull that one strand out. You'll find that it'll all bunch up, but as soon as that thread is released, the bunch will release itself as well, and now it's untangled and only 5 strands long. So I've got one here. I'm going to do that again to create a second strand. Pull it out, it'll bunch up, and as soon as the thread is out, it all releases. So here are my 4 strands. I'm going to put them to the side. I'll use them a little bit later. And then I get the 2 that I've released from that group, place them together. So now I've just got 2 threads that I'm going to stitch with. Now, to thread your needle, the best technique I've found is that I just lick the end of the thread, and then I'm going to squeeze these 2 strands in between my thumb and my forefinger. And I'm actually putting a fair bit of pressure on that. I'm really pinching them because I want to flatten out those threads. The flatter they are, the easier I'll find it'll get through the eye of my needle. So I'm pinching them. Now I'm going to gently roll my fingers back, and as I do so, I'm going to just feed the eye of the needle over those threads, and it'll just thread itself into the eye of the needle, like that. You'll find if you're really struggling to get your threads through the eye of your needle, you might find that the eye is simply too small. I recommend you switch needles to a slightly larger eye, and you might find you have more success. The other thing I want to show you finally is how to create a nice neat knot in the end of your thread. If you're anything like me, the knot that I was shown as a child when I was learning how to stitch and at school was a great big bulky mess that you wrapped around your finger, and it was awful. I've since learned a much faster and neater technique, so I'll show you that as well. What you're going to do, I'm going to use my forefinger in the hand that I'm holding my needle. I'm going to rest the thread on the forefinger and then rest my needle on top of the thread. Then I'm simply going to wrap the thread twice around the tip of the needle. Then I'm going to trap all of that between my forefinger and my thumb and simply pull the needle through. So again, I'm pinching my forefinger and my thumb. I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on there to make sure that my make sure that my knot remains. Continue pulling the thread through, and you'll find I can feel now a little knot in my fingers. You know you're done when you can feel that knot forming. So here I have a very small, neat knot that I can now keep on the back of my work, and it won't be a big bulky mess. I'll just trim that off a little just to make it even neater, and I'm ready to start stitching. I hope that helped.